Right, ladies and gentlemen, another shocking figure for you all to think about before we move on to our next subject. Here we are. According to OECD figures, 300% more time is spent on unpaid care work by women than men. 300%. Yet another very unsettling figure there. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be reeling those off throughout the day as well. Well, we move on now from women on the global stage to women, leadership and talent. Now, diversity and inclusion, of course, is a key focus for most organizations today. However, of course, there are still huge challenges and women are still majorly underrepresented. A recent study shows that the main challenges keeping women from leadership positions are that women are held to higher standards. Also, is that many businesses aren't ready to hire for top executive positions. They're not ready to hire them. Time constraints due to family responsibilities, I can sort of relate to that, I suppose, and not having the same connections as men, which I find a little bit ridiculous as well, and that women are less likely to ask for the position or the raise, which runs true with so many people that I know as well. Now, what many people and what many companies do not realize is that if they do not act now, they risk losing their current women leaders, and they also risk losing that next generation as well. So, time now to find out how to secure the talent pipeline. And who better to talk about this than three senior women leaders, might I add. And I'm very pleased to say that we also have two male voices on the panel today as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm welcome to our first guest. Please welcome Supriya Kummamuru. She's the CTO for the Middle East and Africa at Tata Consultancy Services. A very warm welcome. Lovely to have you here. How are you? Please do take a seat. Our next guest is Noha Hefny. She is the founder and CEO of People of Impact, UAE. A very warm welcome. Our next guest is Jiten Vyas. He is the Chief Commercial Officer and member of the Executive Board at VFS. Fantastic to have you here. And our final guest is Harshvendra Soin, the Chief People Officer of Tech Mahindra, India. A very warm welcome. Fantastic to have you here. There you go, an even playing field for you, ladies and gentlemen. There we go, two voices from men and two female voices as well. Wonderful to have you here today. Right, I wanted to start off actually with a general overview from each of you in terms of what you feel is the current market condition when it comes to women in leadership positions. What sort of culture change or new approach do you think is needed? Let's start off with setting the scene. Ladies first, let's start with Supriya.
Thank you. So let me start with something which is very gender agnostic, and I think Meg was referring to it and Manoj also referred. I think what is gender agnostic is your intelligence, your qualifications and your capability to realize the roles. But if you go to the gender female, there are a lot more diversity quotients to it. I think it starts with age, your marital status, your career stage and phase you're in, and also looks and attitude. I think that also matters when we are I would say the boundaries are blurring. All these were which of great concern, maybe I would say almost 3 decades back when I started my career, have blurred now thanks to different work patterns and the industry I come from. I can work 24/7, which we sometimes do along with other responsibilities. But I think, yes, we need to focus on, and there are opportunities now. There are 2 things to it. One is the environment has to provide, make it, enable it, help women navigate their personal and professional careers. The other is, I think, the lady herself. I think you enjoy what you're doing and have the confidence to face the role. Very often, given the constraints that we have, depends on the culture and the geography that you come from, probably you hesitate. Fortunately, I was not in that, though I belong to a culture where I should have had I made a choice at different phases. So I think the world is out there open. enjoy what you're doing and you're qualified to do it. And I think the ecosystem will open up for you.
And as you said, it's so important to have that ambition anyway as an individual to sort of fight for what you want at the same time as well, definitely.
And I think the bias to that I would add is it's the attitude. So sometimes in some cultures, if it's women having that ambition, probably there's a negative connotation, but men having is considered, yes, they have to. So I think that has to be overcome by most women in probably circumstances.
And it is breaking those barriers, isn't it? Noha, over to you. What sort of climate do you think there is at the moment, especially within the Middle East? Let's focus on the Middle East.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the question, and thank you to IGF for inviting me today. For me, looking at the global picture of what is happening around the world, obviously COVID-19 has had a tremendous impact on women and girls, actually disproportionately impacting them, whether this is on the socioeconomic front. So when we look at communities, those who are most impacted by socioeconomic issues like poverty, hunger, education, etc., are the women. Now, when we take that to the workplace, again, we see a similar disproportionate impact. More women during the pandemic have been burdened, with all the care responsibilities falling on them, and again, having to step up for their roles as teachers, caregivers, mothers, and professionals as well, continuing to deliver at the same rate that their organizations are expecting. So this is causing really, again, a tremendous pressure on women. Remote work, as a result, has given many women the opportunity to balance work and life, but for some, it has been more pressuring to be available 24/7 and again, as mentioned earlier in this forum, I think setting boundaries, ensuring quality in terms of work-life balance, and when we look at family, as women, we always have this guilt factor. What do I do? Do I deliver? There's always a trade-off. And to be honest, I don't think we can have it all on that point. And the reason is that it's always a choice between, today I'm going to trade off one aspect of the work, and tomorrow it's going to be the family. And it's striking that balance between all the trade-offs. But I think we can do it, and I do believe that we should be represented as women in every sector. And I also think, in terms of the environment, an inclusive recovery or future of work cannot materialize without women being at the heart of planning, decision-making, and shaping the way forward, whether it is at the community level or at the workplace level. So I would say the shift that we truly need is a strategic approach. And I know there's a lot of momentum, there's a lot of leaders in public or private sectors looking to step up, their commitments towards gender equality, but there needs to be more strategic integration. There needs to be more evidence-based approaches using data to measure progress on these actions on diversity, equity, and inclusion, on women's rights, on driving gender equality in organizations. And I think today I haven't seen, organizations going beyond that initial commitment. So we are seeing gender-sensitive approaches, but not necessarily and responsive approaches. So there is action, there are policies being developed, etc. But again, in the private sector, I think we have a long way to go to actually drive gender transformation and gender transformative action, where we embed, gender equality, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the very fabric and DNA of our companies, and where we, it's part of the strategy. It goes hand in hand. It's not something, a nice to do that we do, to tick a box or to report to an investor on the S of the ESG. It's a consistent drive forward to truly embed this in the benefit of both men and women. So
interesting what you say about the pandemic and the flexible working, and actually you think that actually it doesn't help women because they have even more responsibilities, and it's not, it's very difficult to sort of balance that out. But very quickly, I'd just like to quickly move on to Jiten. Tell us about your outlook when it comes to the climate for women in leadership positions.
For us, I'll talk about my organization, VFS Global, and I've taken the challenge, Manoj. Next time we'll be better balanced here on this forum. For us, a company that's present in 140 countries, it's a very young 22-year-old organization with 9,500 employees, 60% of which are women. hand on my heart, did it start like this? No. Have we got better? Have we improved? 100% yes. The mantra that we have, our CEO Zubin, who was here yesterday, and for a whole lot of us, is it starts with us and it stops with us. I superly agree to your comment about ticking the box and doing it for board reports and the ESG piece, etc. But the reality is, when for a company like ours, when we work in markets like India, we're a homegrown Indian company. We work in Africa, here in Middle East. The last 7 to 10 years, with the positive advent of social media, has seen greater awareness within women, but also on gender equality. I know today's session is on leadership, but for us, a whole lot of us, we should start from the bottom up. How can we impact, how can we influence a small or medium enterprise offering a catering service in Africa to a tier 3 or a tier 4 city in Jamnagar in Gujarat? How can we influence that lady or that small family business? That's the thinking that we've developed over the last few years. And my last point on this, the slight advantage that we have as a company that works only with governments is we have the ability to see what governments are doing. We have a whole lot of institutions such as the IGF here, and also the fact that our origins out of India, 3 of these things kind of blend in together to ensure where we are today and where we want to be in the next 5 to 7. I don't think we want to promise the moon, but 5 to 7 is a good target for us to see, can we make a difference? Thank you.
It's very encouraging indeed. We move on over to Harshvendra. How important are women to your organisation, and how do you see the current climate for women in leadership positions right now?
Well, thank you. And well, I represent a company that is 170,000 people across 105 countries. And if you look at the climate, I would say mindsets are changing, but they're not changing fast enough. Diversity and inclusivity is extremely important. We're a tech company. Innovation is at our core. Women leaders don't need dole-outs. They need equality and equal opportunity. And that's the mindset change. And I'm very happy to see the topic, because actually it's about spearheading women leadership and securing the talent pipeline. And to me, the challenge is the broken rung in the middle. You know, I've had many conferences where people talk passionately about how they're hiring women at the bottom of the pyramid. That's great. But the issue really is, how are they nurturing that talent to grow from what I call the broken rung? And I was very happy to hear Her Excellency talk about it. I'm blessed to have, my mom's a judge, my wife's a professional, I'm surrounded by women, my daughter is a professional too. I think we need to make that change in schools, colleges, and our homes. It is not about a particular culture or a particular country, but I think it's about how we are brought up thinking. And therefore, I would insist again that we have a mindset problem. And we have a problem in the middle to top. And that is a difficult challenge in today's scenario, but it's changing.
Because it seems that the generation that we look up to at the end of the day were mainly male breadwinners, and women looked after the kids and family, whereas our next generation, you know, it's changing a little bit. So hopefully the generation after us is going to, you know, see the real difference, do you think? And so, yes, let's talk about where change needs to start then. As you mentioned, education and at home, what other sort of elements of change are necessary, do you think?
So I think leadership, picking up from the thread he says, is inborn in a lady, whether it was in the house or, I think that's a trait. You now call it leadership in a corporate, but I think even when they nurtured children in home, when he says his mother is a judge, it was inborn. It's not to do with culture, but how you grew up, the exposure you were given. So I think that's there in women to do it. And how do we make this change happen? So there are different, like in organizations, if I take TCS from where I come, we are a 600,000 big organization across the globe, I would say. And as I speak, probably adding more for offices in different countries. and 1/3 of them are women employees, and out of which 1/3 are in leadership positions. So what we have done is we have actually dovetailed different programs in different career and stages of a woman's life, starting when they start with an I Aspire program where you mentor and groom them, because that's a stage in their life when they are trying to grapple with work, and some who are new into a family life maybe, or so it's a new organization right out of college, so there are programs for them. And then you have at a mid past that, you try to inspire them. So we have programs where we try to say, please, you have the talent and you can do it. So past that, there's a third stage where we ask them to imagine, get into leadership positions, and if we see potential for them to do, they are groomed into leaders. And besides that, there are different platforms. One of them is called the Now Network. It's network of working women, and there we again have a diversity quotient in terms of the sectors they address to, because being a large organization, different sales, marketing, emerging tech, we again have women leaders there who groom and mentor people, women who want to get into those roles. So I think it's a well-rounded, holistic approach, and that should be taken where, like I said earlier, the organization needs to help women navigate this seamlessly.
I wanted to move on to some personal challenges, actually, for both of you, if I may. What are the main sort of personal challenges you've had along the way? Is there anything that sort of prevented you from getting what you deserved? And how did you overcome that? Very quickly. Yeah.
Okay, this would be a 30 seconds. So speaking more for myself, I think I was blessed. I did not have many challenges, because I think my father was very open to he never discriminated. It's just that we were all girls. So I don't think that came about. And I actually started off as an entrepreneur. So the leadership quality was there. But when it comes to the challenge, yes, there were challenges and challenges, which I think you need to make a choice. Some I actually didn't pick up roles because I had a choice that maybe my children needed me more than, so I took a back seat. But I think there were challenges when they felt that maybe I cannot take up the role because I have to relocate. But I did that at this point very recently. Earlier it was small stints traveling, but I think that was a choice which was made. I don't think, so there I don't know if it should come from within. Can you move? And yes, my spouse is I think supportive. He would have moved with me, and now actually it's a point when I'm asked, so is your family with you? So I don't think the same is question of a male colleague. I mean, you're moving and relocating. So I wouldn't call this a challenge, but I think you have to face, and it happens and you can handle it.
Moving on, sorry, we are running out of time, sadly. But yeah, very quickly, what sort of challenges and opportunities have you had on the way?
Yeah, well, they're both organizational, but obviously reflect on my personal leadership journey. So on the organizational level, I mean, I've worked with so many organizations on advancing their gender equality, and I always see culture to be the most difficult and challenging aspect to address. You know, how do we build those inclusive cultures that integrate both men and women? And, you know, because of the unconscious bias, because of the harmful gender stereotypes that can be both consciously and unconsciously perpetuated or reinforced through different processes, the language that we use, etc., and non-inclusive practices, I mean, many organizations struggle in that respect. So again, that particular aspect impacted my personal journey. I was also in male-dominated fields. So as an Arab woman, I started my career working with refugees at the UN and ended up in East Sudan, south of Algeria, with male colleagues and partners who asked me, like, do your parents allow you to come here? What are you doing on the field? How do you survive? Are you going to persevere? Is this difficult for you? And again, all of these are assumptions about who I am, can I do it, and my entire choice, actually. So the culture aspect and the assumptions we make about women is critical, and we should be, it starts with self-awareness. We all have these unconscious biases and past judgments all the time about cultures, nationalities, and gender. But, we should be aware about them and call them out as well in workplaces, have ways to report on that internally in confidential ways. And constantly, have ways to get mentorship around our own, conscious and subconscious bias. But on a different level, it goes beyond that. It goes into society. So when I talk about culture, that and biases and all of this, it extends to society. And that is, again, how are the biases and stereotypes driven in society? It's the media, it's the marketing, it's the information we consume every day. Mm-hmm. So what do we need to do about it? As people, as I mentioned, it's our own self-awareness, and it's calling it out when it happens and not saying, oh, it's okay. And when we face it personally, also having those tough conversations sometimes with people to set the boundary and to explain why this could have been something that, was not acceptable for someone. But on the media level, it's really, again, going back to that strategic integration, which is we need to transform our marketing practices. We need to make them more inclusive. We need to look at the advertisements, particularly for consumer-facing companies, and say, are they reinforcing gender biases? Are they positioning women in, traditional roles that have become obsolete? Like, I'm an Arab woman. Everywhere I go around the world, there is that stereotype that we are oppressed, discriminated, unable to speak up for different reasons. Our story is told in so many different voices. So unless we step up as women first to change the narrative, because stereotypes are everywhere, with the Arabs, with the Asians, everywhere, European women, American women, and it will never stop. But we need to own our story. We need to own our narrative as women. It starts with us. And then we need those support networks that can further push, this idea that, gender roles have transformed. We're past this stage where women cannot be achieving any dream that they aspire for. In the UAE is a great example of that.
Very well said.
What was said. But I think culture is the biggest challenge. Organizations are changing policies, but are these policies being role modeled? Mm-hmm. Again, that goes back to a mindset, a leadership mindset that stems out of culture.
Sadly, we are running out of time. Yeah, because we just to get these last two voices in while we can. But really well said. Thank you so much. Yeah. And so fascinating, so interesting. Right, moving on to Jiten. Let's talk about what you think in terms of what do you think is holding women back? I said some of the figures earlier that, some of these findings are that women don't have enough time because of family responsibilities. Companies aren't ready to position these women into their companies in senior roles. And also, women aren't asking for these promotions. What do you think as well is holding women back?
I think for us, experience in personal and professional life, fully agree here. Culture. 7 billion, 8 billion population now, majority of them coming from emerging markets, India, China, etc. I think it's the culture. Leaving that aside, what can we do? Media, social media, and once again, to be repetitive, it starts from within. That's the mantra for us, personally and professionally.
Thank you so much. And also, tell us a little bit more about the role of men as well. What role have men got to play in order to help and encourage women as well into these positions?
I think it's a very important role. And, you asked the question, what should change? It's affirmative action. I get very flustered when I hear, in corporate world saying that, we're going to have a meeting on diversity and inclusivity. You can't have one meeting on inclusivity and diversity. Every single meeting, this has to be an agenda. And you talked about it. You attend women leadership program, you have all women sitting. That's not the problem. Problem is with the men. And the other thing is, it's the support. It's changing, but I think what we need is, we call it the decision on head, heart, and hand, which means head, you have to take decisions on strategic level, within corporates and countries and communities. On the heart, you need to actually look at psychological safety. You actually have to look at how men mentor women and allow an equal opportunities. And the hand, finally, is on policies. So I think if all of this is addressed, and with the support of men, because they still control 60% of the jobs, unfortunately, all over the world, it is a collaborative effort that will bring this change. And even if this change is small, it's going to be significant.
Very nicely rounded up. Sadly, that's all we've got time for. I wish we could talk more on this, but sadly, there's just not enough time. At the end of the day, we all want the same thing, the same opportunities, the same pay, and an even playing field at the end of the day, don't we? Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for our panel. Very well done indeed. Thank you so much for making the time for us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.